Okay, back to make another music video. I had started recording this a minute ago, and for some reason my camera cut off and only got like the first 3 minutes. But today what I'm going to be doing is breaking down another version of my rig. So the last video that I made here was about my other rig, and that incorporated the 2 notes Revolt preamp, 3-channel preamp. It's got one that's modeled after a Fender Bassman, one that's modeled after a Marshall, I think it's like a JCM 800, something like that, and the other one modeled after a Soldano SLO 100, the channel I don't use very much. Going into this, which is the Mooer Tube Engine, 20 watt all tube power amp. It's a very clean power amp. The idea is that if you like the sound of your pedals, you can plug your pedal board directly into this and get 20 watts of tube power, which is actually can be insanely loud, especially if you're going for overdriven and higher up on the gain. This gets really cracking loud. Like, you do not need to use this at a high volume at all, which you'll see later on. A friend of mine, Ike Kawaguchi, who played the last gig that I played, actually borrowed this setup, plugged his pedal board directly in, and it sounded fantastic. So today, I'm not going to be using the two notes Revolt or the HX Stomp. I'm going to be demoing the simplest version of my rig, and that's using this guy. This is the orange Terror Stamp. And for those of you who don't know what this is, it is a tube solid state hybrid amp. It's got a 12AX7 powered preamp, and it's got a 20 watt just as well as this solid state power amp. Now, there's a huge discrepancy in the loudness, the actual volume of 20 solid state watts versus 20 tube watts. However, I have gigged with the Orange Terror Stamp with a full band. That was me, another guitarist, a bass player, a keyboard player, and a pretty ham-fisted, heavy-handed drummer who liked to play in the style of Traffic. So this thing is fully capable on its own. However, I prefer the sound of a tube power amp because you can drive this power amp and get real amp distortion out of it, and it sounds amazing. And also, it gives me the versatility for when I don't use a preamp, like I will be showing you guys in the next video that I make about guitar rigs, which is using the HX Stomp direct into the Mooer Tube Engine. But the signal is my guitar going into actually the Echoman from X-Vive, and what the Echoman is, it's a copy of the Memory Man from Electro Harmonics. However, this is actually designed by the original designer of the Memory Man. I don't know his name offhand, but I've read the literature and I've watched a video of him explaining this. He did some changes to the circuit. Obviously, they put it in this tiny housing, and they've also added a modulation control and a switch so you can change the modulation from either chorus to vibrato. And so we'll do a little bit of playing this with some slapback. Slapback is really the only type of echo I ever use when I'm playing. And yeah, we'll do that later. Now, this is an analog delay pedal. It's a Bucket Brigade chip. Like, for those of you who don't know anything about how the Bucket Brigade chip works, basically, like, you're plugged in, your sound hits, I believe it's one of the transistors, and when those fill up with current, it dumps the signal over to another one. And this kind of analog delay solution creates these artifacts that are kind of cool and that are synonymous with certain sounds. So that's why we love this sound, because you're actually losing some fidelity as you go on down that chain. That's my understanding of it, at least. I'm not an electrical engineer, not going to pretend to be. But I'm going into the Echoman, from there out into the Orange Terror Stamp, and then I'm coming out of the preamp. So we're bypassing the power amp of the Orange Terror Stamp and going into the Mooer Tube Engine, then into the Quilter Block Dock. This is a 10-inch guitar speaker that I love. It's made by Quilter to be used with their Block Dock series. So the guitars I'm going to be playing today are my Les Paul standard 50s gold top here, and this wonderful Harley Benton MR Classic Vintage. This is the cheapest guitar that I own. It's also one of the most fun guitars that I own. It's got 2 P90s. To me, they sound great. I thought when I bought this, because it's like 140 bucks, that I was going to need to change the pickups, but I haven't had the urge to. And I think I gigged this guitar once, It's just nice to take a guitar with you that you can knock around. You can leave it back behind in the green room or whatever and not think that some idiot's going to knock it over and break the headstock and not say anything, which I have had happen years ago playing a gig with Dylan Dre. Some of the songs we were playing were like on the at the end of the TV show Grimm, and I think at the end of another show. But I had my Epiphone Dot back in the green room. The guitar was fine when I played it for sound check, and when I came back into the green room, the guitar case was on the ground where I hadn't left it, and when I opened it up, the neck was broken off. Nobody said anything. I had to borrow a Fender Telecaster from a very snarky young woman who remarked that's why she bought vintage guitars, as if a guitar being vintage or not is the reason that it will or will not have a neck break, instead of, Gibson and Epiphone using a break angle on their guitars that's caused them to break as long as they've been in existence. I believe the Gibson break angle is 17 degrees and the Epiphone is 13 or 14. So the Epiphones are less likely to break than the Gibsons, but they still have this issue. Gibson claims this is why they get their sound, even though PRS makes similar styles of guitars that sound great without that break angle. But that's neither here nor there. It's nice to have a knock-around guitar, and especially when it's one that's so cheap and sounds fantastic. I bought that from Thomann. Harley Benton is Thomann's house brand. I also had to acquire the Mooer Tube Engine from Thomann because they don't sell them in the United States, which sucks because to my knowledge, there's nothing that really competes with this product in the U.S. market, and maybe that's by design by a lot of these companies because, there's embargoes on certain things for certain companies. You know how the markets are controlled? It stinks for us consumers, but whatever. Let's get into some sounds. So I'm going to start with a very clean tone. I'm going to turn off the Echoman, and what I'm going to do here is I'm going to turn the volume all the way up on the orange. It already is okay. I'm going to turn the gain all the way down, and I'm going to bring the Mooer Tube Engine's volume up to about half. And now I'm going to just mess with the gain until we get a nice little clean tone. This is about as loud as I can get it when it's this clean. Let's see how it sounds with the Echoman. Turn up the vibrato on the memory man. cleanest sound that I can get out of the rig, and that is definitely loud enough for a small gig. If you're the type who plays that clean, it's actually bordering on uncomfortable right here. I don't know if it's going to translate over the camera mic. I do have the camera mic back down just a bit so I don't overload the preamp in the camera, but that is a good clean sound. And if you were to hit that with an overdrive pedal, it would open up a little bit already. But the nice thing about the Orange Terror Stamp is it has a very usable sweep as far as its gain is concerned. So I'm going to turn my guitar back up. I'm going to dial back the volume on the Mooer Tube Engine. I'm going to bring it up to about halfway. And now we're going to see how much gain at different stages. So here we go. We're starting to get a little bit of breaker. That's a nice sound there. Now I'm liking that sound. I'm going to hit it with a little bit of the echo. And I'm going to turn the modulation down. Let's see how far we can go. I'm going to turn off the echo. I'm going to keep the Mooer Tube Engine's volume where it is because, as you can probably hear, with more saturation, more gain, it's a lot louder. We don't need to turn it up. And that's why I'm saying you can get a great amount of volume out of this. If you're the type who uses like a half stack or something like that, or if you're taking this as like a rig that you just take to a venue and play through their cabs, like this is all you need, especially since most places are gonna mic your cab anyway. You don't need nearly as much volume as this can provide. So I'm gonna turn it up right now. It's at about 11 o'clock, about 10 o'clock. I'm gonna go up to 11 o'clock. That's already cooking. So for this room, as we go up with the gain of the Terror Stamp, I'm gonna have to start dialing the volume back. And right now we're halfway up, and that's uncomfortable already right now. Let's go to about noon. how that sounds with some echo. Now I'm gonna change the modulation type to chorus, and then I'm gonna add the modulation back in. That's nice. That's a nice combo. So I'm gonna disengage the Echoman. And now, so to be quite honest, we're gonna get into the territory with the Terror Stamp where I rarely go unless I'm kind of like playing metal jokingly. I'm not like a high gain player. I'm not like a shredder. So I don't really go into this territory. And honestly, when you get past about 2 o'clock on this thing, you get to about 3 o'clock, in my opinion, the Terror Stamp's gain gets unusable. And that's where if you were going to use this in this way, you might want to consider using some other type of overdrive pedal or something just to get a better sounding high gain tone. Like you'll hear it. It gets into high gain pretty well, and then it takes a steep dive off a cliff. But I mean, I think this pedal costs $200. Altogether, this whole rig, I think $200 for this. The Mooer Tube Engine, I paid about $3 for it, but I got a blemished version. It usually goes for about $400, so still pretty good. And the block dock, because of what the speaker's made out of and Quilter's technology, it was a little more expensive, but you can definitely find cheaper cabs than this that would make this an inexpensive rig and a great sounding rig also, because a lot of smaller, cheaper tube amps that you can buy that are in the price range of all of this stuff together, they're not gonna sound as good as you can get out of this rig. So, but yeah, I think the block dock's like $400 or something like that. So not extremely expensive, but if you're trying to keep to a budget rig, there are other options that you could get good sound out of. And if you like a 12-inch cab, obviously, you for less than $400, you can find a decent 12-inch speaker instead of this 10-inch. I'm more of a fan of 10-inch speakers. That's just my preference for guitar. But let's add some more gain. up there. It's getting a little fizzy. I'm even gonna drop the volume on the power amp a little bit. And I'm going to boost the presence a little bit, which that's another thing that's really nice about the Mooer Tube Engine is this presence control. So if everything starts to get darker, like this orange Terror Stamp, it's like a micro dark. So as you increase the gain, it gets quite a bit darker, and I've got this presence control to deal with that. So that's always nice as well. Now we're gonna, excuse my bad impression of Slayer, we're gonna go up a little bit more. Here we go. Okay, now I'm gonna take the shape control actually, and I'm gonna go more into the scooped mids territory. So some of that out, but that's like the limit of where I would put the gain. And actually I had the volume knob on my Les Paul. I'm on the bridge pickup, by the way. I've been on the bridge pickup this entire time. I only had the volume up at 7. If I turn the volume up to 10, then even here it gets a little unruly. Let's check it out. Of my usage, and you see when I turn the volume on the bridge pickup all the way up, it gets kind of nasty. I wouldn't necessarily use that tone, but some people might find use for it. So I'm gonna dial the volume on the tube engine back, and I'm just gonna dime the gain on this thing so you can hear that, which is a setting I would never honestly use. The thing dimed. Let's mess around with some delay with that sound. Let's see how it sounds. that last part, I had the guitar all the way down to 3 when I realized how unruly it was to have it gained up like that. Also, with the delay on, I'm gonna crank the delay off. And for all the single coil people out there, I'm gonna play a little bit with the Harley Benton MR Classic, Mosrite. I believe it was a Mosrite Ventures copy, the Johnny Ramone guitar. That's what attracted me to this. I love the Ramones. I mean, I love anything weird, so of course I love the Ramones. Very different guitars, very different sounds, huh? Bad Led Zeppelin covers aside, this guy and these P90s sound amazing through this setup. They are a little bit darker, these P90s. Cheaper pickups tend to be a little bit darker, right? And they don't tend to have the same amount of clarity, but we just mess with this presence control. Here. A little more presence, and then we'll mess with the shape control here, which one of my favorite guitar players, the P90s. You can get that sound out of this rig as well. Let's get a clean sound with the P90s. So let's take the gain down a bit. Not necessarily clean, but like edge of breakup tone. Let's feed some delay into it. A little more volume. 19 years old. All the cowboy chords, all the first position stuff. It's good sound coming out of this, huh? Let's add some more of that chorus. I'm gonna add just a hair more gain. Yeah. So yeah, it's not gonna sound like a Roland Jazz Chorus, which is my actual favorite combo amp, but you can get some sounds like that. And yes, I did play that part over here. I just like the way it sounds better than playing it over there. Guitar is all about flavor. That's why you make your choices. I know that, yeah, he played it over here, but I like it more over there. That's pretty much all I had for this rig. So as you can hear, you get a lot out of this rig, right? Like it's pretty freaking cool. And with this P90 equipped guitar, it has a lot of character. And I just feel like this guitar with this rig it makes so much sense because you got a cheap guitar, you got a pretty cheap modular rig here, and you could just get out there and play and have fun and not really worry about your stuff too much. Also, this rig is not heavy at all. This weighs like a pound. The delay pedal obviously weighs nothing. I think the tube engine weighs 5 pounds, and the cab doesn't even weigh 5 pounds. So to get a comparable combo amp, you're looking at something, most of them weigh like 30 pounds for a good combo amp. And that's like a Blues Junior, like a 15 watt amp that's pretty bland sounding. With this, it probably weighs about 10 pounds in total. And yeah, you have to set up some cabling, but it's not really the biggest deal. And you also have the ability to pull pieces out of this as you see fit. Like in the next guitar rig video that I make, I'm gonna do my HX Stomp with its presets just into this. And so you have the option to do that. And another thing that I've been playing with recently is putting my 2 Notes Revolt tube preamp into the loop of the HX Stomp. So I can have like a fuzz pedal first in the chain, or a compressor first, then a fuzz pedal, then I can create a loop section, and I can dump in the 2 Notes Revolt. I could also do the same thing with the Terra Stamp, and then I can have that after the fuzz, and there's a boost on the 2 Notes Revolt, so I can boost it there, so that way I have the proper signal chain order, but I'm still using it with the HX Stomp for everything else, and I have all of my modulation, my delay, my reverb after the loop section where I patch in the 2 Notes Revolt. So this rig gives me the option to set everything up the way that I want to, instead of being tied to the preamp and the power amp that are given to you by amp manufacturers. And let's be real, a lot of these amp manufacturers today are putting out crap. Like those new Gibson amps, I was so excited about those because I've always loved the sound of those old Gibson amps. And I watched so many of these videos talking about those amps and praising those amps. And then one guy, a guitar repair guy here on YouTube, actually looked at how it was set up. And, you know, for $1,400 and $2,000 tiny amps, they've got tubes that are mounted directly to the board. So that's just going to tank any idea of longevity that you could have with one of those amps. And, you know, with something like this, if one piece of this rig malfunctions, which this has a pretty good reputation, the tube engine, I've had the orange Terra Stamp since it came out in 2020, and I've had no issues with it whatsoever. But if one of these pieces were to malfunction, you know, this has its own power amp, so I can keep playing this. It's not that big of a deal. This power amp is pretty much serviceable from everything that I've seen. This little delay pedal cost me basically nothing, so I wouldn't even care too much. You know, I also have my HX Stomp, by the way. But, you know, like, it just gives you options. And if something malfunctions, you're more flexible with how you can deal with that. So I'm gonna play you out with a little bit of Rory Gallagher, and then we'll be done. Shortened it up a little bit, but yeah, you get the idea. You get whatever sounds you want about it. Thanks for watching. I have a link to the last song that I put out in the description below. Feel free to check that out. I'd really appreciate it. It's a little different from the type of guitar stuff I'm playing in this video, but I'll also have a link to like my whole Spotify page where you can listen to all the music that I've made. And some of it is rock. I don't make rock music as much anymore.